We ease into easements in today's video. Hey everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to my layout. We're going to do a how-to video today about easements. Easements are those nice gentle transitions from straight track into curved track. I know I talked about it in my last video about S-curves and easements, but upon reflection, I think I could have done a little bit better job, spoken a little bit more about how exactly to create easements in a nice, simple way. And I'm to the point now where I am laying down cork on the bench work, and so heck, if I'm gonna talk about easements, I better do it now before it's too late. So enough of this. Let's switch to a different angle and get right into it. All right, so here we are at a section of my layout where we're going to transition from a straight piece and into the curved section, and this is where I want to put in my easement. As you can see, I've already drawn it out here, so I'm going to show you basically how I reached this curve, this easement, how I got to where I am today. What I'm using is something called sweepsticks. Sweepsticks are a product that you can purchase from Fast Tracks. Just look them up, just Google them. Fast Tracks, you'll find the sweepsticks. Sweepsticks are, it's basically a laser cut piece of wood. It's a tool that you can use to measure out your radius curves on for your layout. They're great. They come in basically any radius you need. And not only can you use them as measuring tools, but you also use them to curve your flex track. Basically places this between your rails, and then you're able to curve. If you have like microengineering flex track or stiffer flex track that tend to hold their curve, this is a really nice way of getting those nice smooth curves into the flex track. Now, traditionally without easements, you can use a tool like this to very easily create the curves on your layout. Basically, you know where your straight section is, you know where like your walls and stuff are, so you kind of just use a tool to sort of measure out between straight sections and walls to figure out curves, right? And when you start adding easements in, it gets a little trickier because you're creating transitions from straight sections into your curves. In this case, I have a 30-inch radius curve. And in order to do that, it's a little bit trickier. And it also takes up more space on the layout, more room. If you have a 30-inch radius minimum radius on your layout and you're adding easements to it, you know, you're going to be adding 4 or 5 inches to each end of the curve to account for those easements, which in my case is actually, shortening my yard up quite a bit. It ends up shortening my yard by about a foot on either end. I have a double-ended yard here. And a foot means that I have, 1 or possibly even 2 less cars per track, which on a layout this size is kind of a deal. So it's a trade-off, right? You're going to get nicer, smoother looking curves, better flowing curves, less potential problems with derailments, but you're going to lose some space on the straight sections of your layout when you do that. So it's a give and a take, but one that's worth it, I think. All right, so how do we create easements? Let's go ahead and do that at this time. I'm going to draw with some overlays here. I'm going to create an imaginary line that extends out across from my straight piece of track. Normally you would line up your sweepstick, or you can even use flex track with this. If you use sectional track like Atlas sectional pieces of track, if you have a smaller radius and a piece of sectional track, works for that. Those are great measuring tools as well. But you would line it up there, and then you would take a pencil and draw down the center line, and you'd be fine there. With easements, you have to do it a little bit different. In this case, I'm going to offset it about an inch. And when I offset it, it's going to be actually a little bit more than an inch. But when I offset it, it's going to be about an inch. When I offset it from that center line of the straight section an inch, if I were to draw a straight line out from this section, you can see it is about 1 inch off from that center line. It's not going to meet up. So we have to transition from this center line to this center line. And that transition is going to be where the easement occurs. So I've pulled it about 1 inch this direction. I've also pulled it about 4, maybe 5 inches away from the end of the straight section of track. And to figure out the difference between this center line and this center line, to find that subtle adjustment that gets me to both center lines, I'm using this piece of flexible plastic right here. If you saw my last video, this is just a piece of plastic trim. You can find it in the paneling section of your local hardware store. But I line it up on the straight section and I line it up on my curve section here, and that transition, this area right in here, that is where my easement takes place, right like that. Now this is a small easement. This probably isn't the best example of an easement. Generally, the larger the radius, the larger the easement you can get, the better, to a point, right? But at least I'm getting a little bit of an easement in here, and I don't have a lot of room for a big easement, but a little bit is better than none, and that's kind of the approach I'm taking here. So what I'm going to do is, when I'm happy with the curve, with the way things are looking, go back here, draw in your center line there, and you have your curve with your nice gentle easement leading into it. And it's really just that simple. Take your time with it, eyeball it. If it looks good to your eyeballs, you know that it's gonna look good when your trains are going around it. And yeah, this is like I said, it's a little smaller. If you want a more mathematical solution, I know some guys are into that, check out Ron's Trains and Things. He's a YouTuber. You've probably seen his stuff before, but he has a really great video on creating easements, where he uses a more mathematical approach of doing it. And it's probably it's probably the proper approach. Probably what I'm doing here is a little too simple, but I don't have the room I need for those longer easements, those more mathematically correct easements. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing just a version where I'm eyeballing, pardon the bump, I'm eyeballing, and I'm getting an easement that looks good and works great for me. I mean, and when I say works great for me, I mean, it allows me to have a little bit of an easement, but still enough straight track heading that direction that I can do everything I need to do with a yard there. And there you have it, a very simple way of creating easements, using just a set of sweepsticks, or sectional track, if you have sectional track that is at the proper radius for what you're doing, and the good old piece of plastic trim we saw from the last video. So hopefully this video, in combination with the last video, gives you everything you need to know about creating curves, easements, S-curves, all the stuff that we as model railroads we as model railroaders do when we're creating our layouts. Okay, so I am starting to mumble, so obviously it's time to get off this video. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for checking out my channel. Subscribe if you want, all that good stuff. You've heard it 1,000 times before from 1,000 other people. See you guys in the next one.